All right, we know prices in San Diego have gone up a lot recently, but is now a good time to buy real estate? Joining me in the studio, my good friend Sarah Haliburton is here. How you doing?
Good. How are
Good to see
you?
you from the Beer Home Team, eXp Realty. Um, let's dive into this because I think a lot of people, you know, everyone who's a home buyer today pretty much lived through the crash.
Correct.
So we all have that scar. You're not alone. Okay. We have that scar. We've seen what can happen. Real estate values can go down. I think a lot of people today are associating a rise in prices with what happened during the crash. And so they might be thinking to themselves, it's now really a good time to buy, seeing that values have gone up so much. So how do we start? How do we begin to evaluate that, Sarah?
Yeah. So the bubble burst conversation happens quite often, and I think that there's a couple of things that you need to look at. One is what's happening in both the mortgage space. You know what's happening right now. I think some of the patterns that we've seen that are different from previous years are it's extremely difficult to get a loan right now. We're not really handing them out like we were back in the crash days where no stated income, no doc loans were
You needed
a
a
thing.
credit score and that was it.
If you even
It
had,
didn't even matter.
It wasn't even a good credit
You
score.
didn't need a good one, you just needed one. Yeah.
So those types of things I think are shoring up against it. And there's other things that we're looking at as far as trends in San Diego specifically, where the secret's out. The Bay found us. They know that we are the cheapest spot along the coast of California. And so with that being said, I don't think that we're going to see a massive exodus of people and the inventory supply all of a sudden hit a mark where prices will significantly drop. Right now, we're so low in inventory. I mean, we would need 6,000 listings to hit today just to get us to what we need to satisfy the buyers today.
You know, for people who are trying to time the market, it's a very difficult thing to do no matter what market it is that you're doing. So the real question I think we have to ask is how long or what is your time frame to be an owner of real estate or to be an investor in real estate? And if you are looking for short-term stuff, if you're a flipper or you want to flip a house or something like that, or you're like, we're going to stay here for a couple years and then we're going to get out of here, then you do need to pay a lot more attention to what's going on if you're not okay with renting the home out when you're done with it, which is what a lot of people do. I mean, we have a lot of military buyers. You and I have worked with a lot of military buyers. They'll buy a home knowing that they might only be here for 2 or 3 or 4 years, but the whole game plan is have someone else pay it off while you PCS to Virginia, so you can come back to a paid off house one day in San Diego. And that's a decent strategy. Some people don't want to be a landlord, and that's fine. But if you have the long-term outlook, I just think you don't need to try to time it as much.
100%. Historically, over time, real estate's the most solid investment, right? So if you're looking at being there 5 to 10 years, you most likely will not see any sort of loss. And like you said, if you go into rentals, I mean, rent's not going to go down, even with rent control in place. It says no more than 10% per year over year. So it will still continue to rise, especially with less people having available housing. So I think, like you said, I mean, if you're going to be here 1 to 2 years, you have no desire to be a landlord, you don't want to rent it. Yeah, maybe now's not the best time. Yeah. But then the other thing to consider is what will rates do? I always tell my buyers, I bought a house when rates were 4.6 and everyone said, don't buy, rates are so high. My price was low. And so now the same house that's $300,000 more, rates are significantly lower. We have the same payment now as the house when it was $500,000 in 2018 at 4.6. The payment is exactly the same today at $850 with a 2.9% interest rate. Mm-hmm. The only difference is they're paying more in principal and I'm paying more in interest.
Right.
So, but I also have $300,000 worth of equity.
That's the big difference.
So that's the caveat, right? Like, so now we always say, buy real estate and wait. Don't wait to buy real estate. And
that's it works out over time. But I mean, I think so time frame is definitely number one on the list. Like, look at your time frame, and if you have a short-term time horizon, you don't have a desire to be a landlord, as Sarah said. Maybe it's not the right time. So then, if it's not the right time, then what do? If it's not the right time for you, you just have to make sure that you're not blowing your opportunity. Like, don't go rent a house, for $4,000 a month or $5,000 a month and live it up like you're, a homeowner, living large or whatever. Try to be as skinny as you can, as skinny as possible. Save as much money as you can. And this is just fair warning. Prices probably will be a lot higher. in the future. So if you don't like the house at 850, if you didn't like it at 500, and now you don't like it at 850, you're going to hate it at 1.1.
Totally.
And so it's just one of those things I'm trying to really prepare the market for, because we've leveled up many times in the San Diego market. As you mentioned in the crash, we had a tremendously different set of circumstances. Right now, we have, it's harder to get a loan. People are getting a loan, they're putting money down, they have to have good credit, fully underwritten. There's literally none of the junky loans out there at all. And a lot of these pre-approved people are not even buying because they can't get a home. They think maybe the price is too high, they're exiting stage left, whatever. So we have a ton of buyers. Like, can you imagine, like, what do you think would happen if prices all of a sudden drop 10%? Like, what do you think would happen? Do you think that would spur more selling, or do you think buyers would come out of the woodworks?
I think we would definitely see an influx of buyers for sure. Where I think buyers get a little hung up is they want to see the comps, right? I have a lot of buyers right now. Well, Sarah, I know that they sent me a counter that says my highest and best, but I'm looking at the comps, and the last sold was 310, and we submitted at 330. So what are the comps? And we've lost out on a couple because they're so focused on what the price was, not what the price is going to be. And what that means is, as soon as they lost out and buyer number 2 got it for 355, that's now the new floor.
Yeah.
And so now everything listed in that building is going to go higher than the 355. And so slowly they're pricing themselves out of the market, where if they would have just gone to 355, which was comfortable for them, they probably would have gotten a house and gotten their first starter home. But now they're looking at 360, 375, and they're going to price themselves out of the market. And so I think if prices did significantly drop, we would see a buyer influx, but I'm afraid that we would also see those buyers that say, well, I'm going to wait and look at the comps, and I'm just going to sit here, and they price themselves out again.
I think there's a lot of people a lot of buyers who know what they want. They know where they want to be. They know what they want, but they have a price in mind, and they want it to be in that box. I'll give you an example. I have an active duty renter right now who wants to buy the home from her landlord. To her, $650 is the fair price. She wants to offer him $650. Well, he's hired an agent who has told him, they have like 6 months left in the rentals, the reason all this is going down, who's told them that they're going to get, at least 7, maybe 7.25. But in her mind, it's $650. And I think there's a lot of buyers like that that say, I want my payment to be this much. I think that's a fair price for this home. So to me, if we see prices come in a little bit, I think buyers would come in from all over the place. Just like if we do see big meeting this week for the Fed, Jackson Hole, they're doing it digital to be safe, et cetera. So they're not actually in Wyoming, but they are meeting, and they're going to talk about taper, and they're going to talk about different things, bonds. If rates were to drop, if bond prices spiked and rates dropped, and you all of a sudden had the national media saying rates hit a new all-time low, that would also bring buyers out of the woodwork regardless of what happens with inventory and prices. And that is just one news story away, just one thing away this week from happening. So in my opinion, if you're going to look into real estate, be a long-term investor. Don't try to be a flipper. Don't try to buy a house for 2 years and make $100,000. Like you can get caught with your pants down very easily doing that. Be a long-term investor. If you're only going to be in San Diego for a couple of years, just look at a pro forma. Just build out a very simple, hey, what if we do own this for a couple of years and then rent it out with our payment versus the rent, and projecting, let's say, a 3% increase each year. I know the rent control you can do up to like 10%, but just project 3%.
Yeah.
Be really conservative with it. How does that look? Does that look good? Are you good with that? And if you're good with that and the tax deductions and benefits that come along with it, then you can feel comfortable even though you only have a couple years. If you don't like it, if you have no desire to be a landlord, okay, sit back, save some money, look for an opportunity. Maybe it makes sense to buy an investment property. If you're very well qualified, but you don't necessarily want to buy a primary home for whatever reason, how we want to live by the beach, but we can't afford these prices, but we do want to come back to San Diego one day, maybe then it makes sense to look at, hey, well, let's buy a detached home, just like all the Wall Streeters are doing. Guys, they're not hiding it. It's in public filings. It's all over my YouTube channel. Wall Street buying single-family homes all over the country to rent them out. Why? Because we're in a huge shortage. And when you're in a shortage of anything, owning it is a good idea. We have a shortage of houses.
Well, Derek, what about all of the chatter, though, about the eviction moratorium ending and all of the people that haven't paid their mortgage in a
Yeah.
year? And I think a lot of people are waiting for that. You know, they're expecting a huge foreclosure short sale market. But the thing that they're not considering is while those people may not have made a mortgage payment over the last year, and while they may face some sort of pre-foreclosure foreclosure scenario, they have so much equity in the house that they're not going to short sale.
Right.
It's very highly unlikely. And if they are going to short sale, you've got a stockpile of investors on Wall Street that are going to buy them before you get to it.
Yeah, you're correct about that. I'm just going to say, like, you're not even going to get a chance at it. But you're right. Remember, prices are up 20% year over year. So even if you're a fool and you just bought a house and never made a payment on it a year ago, you're still selling that and making money. Even if you never made a payment on the house that you purchased, you're still selling it for a profit in a regular sale scenario. So you just have to be a complete fool to, first of all, to do that intentionally, but then also to allow it to be foreclosed upon when you could just do a regular sale. So I want to implore everyone, if you're in that situation, by all means, please do a regular sale. Don't let them foreclose. Why would you do that? You can, even if the home's not in perfect condition in this market, you can get good money for it. So it just makes no sense to actually foreclose, in that situation. And that's why we're not seeing a ton of foreclosures. If you look, like people always say, oh, look, NOD's ticked up. Look, there it is. It's coming. It's the wave. Calm down. You got to understand how this process works. Notice of default first, right? And then there's another notice, which I forget the name of now. And then they have to file one more thing with the court, and then you have to do another thing. So it's like a 5-step process to actually foreclose on a home, and it takes months and months to do this. And the lender has to really push it. If the lender doesn't push it, if they just file the notice, then it doesn't necessarily go anywhere. That's why some people are, there. And right now you have this moratorium. So none of that stuff has really been happening, even if a default notice has been filed. It's only because someone didn't call in and request forbearance.
Yeah.
So if they Google anything, they're going to find this, just say, call your lender and say forbearance. That's all you have to say. Even if you don't speak English, just say forbearance and give them your social security number. I mean, that's it.
And meanwhile, these notice of defaults, don't forget, there's like a plethora of investors and agents that are waiting as soon as that first NOD is filed. And they're dialing it before anybody even knows that it exists.
Right.
So the chances of it actually going to market and being like a fair opportunity for all of these buyers that have been waiting on a short sale or a foreclosure is highly unlikely.
It's not going to happen, let's be honest.
No,
I like your astute accuracy that it's highly unlikely, because maybe it's possible one squeezes through and threads the needle. Mm-hmm. But not going to happen.
Not gonna happen.
There's too many. Imagine being an investor in this market. Imagine being a flipper.
There's a lot of them that stopped flipping in this market.
I know. What are you going to do? There's nothing there. You're beating down doors. You're trying to contact dilapidated properties. You're involved in the whole probate process. You're networked with 1 million realtors. Still.
But even because now you have the buyers that may not have the huge budget, but they have the vision. When I bought my house, it wasn't perfect. I had to have vision. And I had a party this last weekend. Everyone came over to my yard and they said, oh my God, it's beautiful. And I said, yeah, you should have seen it before. This is, 40 grand later. But you had to have the vision to see. And I think that that's what a lot of first time buyers in this market are doing, is they have vision and they're like, okay, I can make this, what I want, which is where the investors are losing out, because before that would have been a cash sale. There's no way. The carpet was thrashed, the paint's thrashed, the kitchen's thrashed, everything's thrashed. But now the buyer's like, I can work with this. I've got a little bit of cash. I can work with this. Mm-hmm. So I think that that's where a lot of investors have kind of exited stage left and just waiting it out. But we have seen an uptick in multi-unit. I don't know about you. But
yeah, definitely seen multi-unit uptick. But the investors getting out of the market, does that mean that they think prices are going down? I want to make it very clear that's not why they're exiting. They're exiting because there's not enough homes for them to flip. So when you're an investor, you're in the numbers game. You're trying to write like 30 offers a day and end up with one property at the end of it, because it's just grand slams only. Like there's no singles, in that game. So if inventory shrinks up to a certain point where, you can write, maybe you're not getting your 30 offers to one, because that's what they've told me, it's like 30 to 1. If maybe you're only getting 15 out and then you're not getting a property, well, you have this crew that you're paying and you have all these things, it just becomes a difficult business model. So I just want to make sure that that's very clear.
But don't forget the big investors that are still buying. You've still got the big iBuyers. You've got the people with all the money. So you've got the Zillows, the Redfins, the Open Doors. They're picking up properties faster than any other investor right now. And if the players with all of the big money and the big hedge funds are buying, why?
Yeah.
Is it because they're going to lose money?
They understand supply and demand, and they know that the supply is short. And like I said, anything, any commodity, any physical thing, anything you can put, any digital thing, Bitcoin is an example, something that has a scarce supply. That is a good thing to own. Sarah, it's been fun.
Thank you
so
so
much
much
for coming. It's great to see you.
Oh, good to see you.
Sarah Haliburton, she sells homes. I do loans. Derrick Evens. Hey guys, share this with your friends. Let's help make them smarter than everyone else.